Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Reinsurance Podcast. I am your co-host, Jerad Lee.
And I'm Ben Rose, and I'm not alone. We have Jon Maury with us, who we're very excited to welcome to the show. Welcome, Jon.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks, guys.
And Jon is VP of International at Zywave, who are helping to transform the insurance industry, but don't let me explain what they do. How about, Jon, you tell us a bit about what Zywave is?
Yeah, sure. I imagine, many on this podcast may not have heard of Zywave, okay, but we're probably that company that, the biggest company that you haven't heard of in the insurance space. I mean, we are nearly 1,000 people with 18,000 clients globally, in 3 different continents. Been around for 20 or more years, and we're rapidly growing right now, right? So, I'd love to talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and so your primary focus now is as VP of International, so that international growth kind of ambition into pressing into these markets. I mean, 18,000 clients must be already worldwide, but sort of what is the remit that you're tackling now from your current position?
Yeah, no, good question. The company being around 20 years, the root of the company been retail brokers in the U.S., okay, and it was very successful around a risk content management platform that's been growing for many years. Up until about 3 years ago, we received a lot of investment from Clear Lake Capital, our private equity backers, and with that came big aspirations to expand, very intentionally expand the portfolio of products. Part of that is international growth. Another part of that is moving up the insurance value chain, right, from those retail brokers to wholesale brokers to MGAs to carriers to reinsurance. So looking at London, as you can imagine, being based here and working with the team, a lot of it's been really focused on the Lloyd's business, where we had a good, strong foothold with one of our assets. That's the web connectivity or WCL asset. But also to expand some of the other products that we have to connect a lot of the demand side of the business, call it the brokers, with the underwriters. And we have these as clients, right? So now what we're doing is putting together and growing our product suite to make those connections to help businesses grow, to help with better efficiency and automation, to help with combined ratio, all the things that are important to our clients globally.
Yeah.
Nice. And so when you talked about your business today, I think we presume that a lot of our focus is on the classic P&C lines and so on. But I understood from some recent news that you're not just P&C, but you're also moving into the cyberspace in a bit of a big way at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's right. You're correct. I mean, it's been P&C focused for many years. One of the acquisitions we made about 3 years ago was Advisen. And Advisen has the world's largest loss database, and a real focus of that has been cyber.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we've been in the cyber business, selling loss data, to brokers, to reinsurers, and carriers, for the last few years. But we're now expanding on that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, being that we have this connective tissue between the brokers and the carriers, who all are very interested in growing distribution or placing business for their clients, to really bring them together into a marketplace.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is what we've been building through one of our assets called Clarion Door. Clarion Door is a rate quote bind solution, which also has this marketplace hub that we're continuing to expand with our clients.
Interesting. And what are the clients, sort of the primary challenge that they're facing? Is just access to new sort of potential policyholders or access to new markets when they think about the opportunity that becomes available through improved distribution channels? What are the primary angles they're trying to unlock or primary parts of the business they're trying to
Yeah, I think it varies. It can vary based on geography and what type of business you are. I can look at it from a London point of view. If you're an underwriter in London and you're looking to expand your capacity, if you're looking to automate, how you can receive and make risk selection, it's certainly a lot easier to go ahead and use a marketplace where you can have brokers who are dealing with excess business in the U.S. And trying to place that into London. right? I mean, I guess the way traditionally this is done is through a lot of portals and submission portals and emails and a lot of traditional paper, call it paper-based for lack of a better word, as opposed to using a marketplace where it's much more simple to fill out one form, to go ahead and review that, make sure it matches your risk appetite, and actually give back a quote quite quickly. I think in the UK, like we're pretty used to this at a personal lines level. We've been doing this for our car insurance and home insurance for many years through comparative marketplace sites. In the US, this hasn't been happening, especially for specialty and excess sort of business. And so we're trying to recreate that as best we can and bring this business together to make the demand side, make it much easier for them to connect with the underwriters.
Yeah. And I think one of these things that it makes sense philosophically, very obviously. Do you see a lot of friction in the willingness for people to adopt these approaches in business that's been traditionally very personal, like relationship-led and similar? Are you seeing a real desire and increase in people wanting to adapt stuff, or are you seeing friction and resistance towards that innovation as well?
Well, I think it depends on the organization, but I think in general, I mean, automation, efficiency, digital transformation is a trend that's just not going away. And when we have this robust client base on both sides of the market, it's easy for us as Zywave to speak to them about how they can improve their loss ratio, how they can improve their efficiency, how they can make better risk selection. So I think it's actually not as difficult a conversation as selling a lot of evangelical technology that hasn't been proven before. This is really just a better way to do something that's been done for many, many years. Okay, and if we look at, I think a good analogy is like buying flights. I mean, I imagine 20 years ago, you may have called your agent, your travel agent, okay, to purchase a ticket. It's really probably no different than how some of this business still works today in insurance, where you call your agent and try to make that connection for your business. Today, we go on the marketplaces, right? We go on to Kayak or Google Flights or Travelocity or whatever that site may be to go ahead and buy flights, and immediately we get prices back. If you're not on that marketplace, you may be left behind.
Yeah. Okay. I think if that analogy for personal lines especially is super pertinent, because you call that agent and they ask you a bunch of questions and they type it into their machine and then they get the 10 quotes. They just call you back with the 10 quotes. Like the ease in which you can say, well, surely if that was just an interface that I went into that could return those results, it's easy for me to sort of evaluate which one makes the most sense for me. The more complicated products you get into, the more advisory value you get from that intermediary, that broker sort of going, okay, it's what are we trying to accomplish across this program or across something a lot more in depth. But it's certainly easy to see where the value add is and is not sort of in the existing infrastructure, right? And where the advisory value brokers can bring makes sense, and where it's like, I just need a portal to get my sort of centralized information out of. But you're exactly right. Once you start getting into that world, the competitive threat a firm has by not being a part of that begins to be significant. So they have to move into that space. And just like the flight purchasing websites, some brands are so large that they can openly say we're not on there, so you have to come to our site too. But most firms have to kind of fall into that pool, and I think you'll see something similar, especially in commercial lines insurance.
Yes. And as we're growing in cyber as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know the large players in cyber, and we have a lot of those as customers. So it's quite, I wouldn't say it's easy, but you certainly a conversation of Me Too or FOMO to have those sort of conversations to go ahead and become part of the platform.
Who's been like the most excited to jump in? What kind of personas have been, you're sort of, let me on, I want to be a part of the marketplace?
Well, I think cyber is, it's usually called the cutting edge of a lot of our business anyway. Okay, so I think that's a natural place to have those conversations. But the people in charge of distribution, the people in charge of growing the business, I mean, those are the conversations you like to have. I would say it's more of a growth play than an efficiency play when it comes to cyber.
Yeah. Well, anytime you bring a new product into the market, the most important piece is how do you get enough potential premium income for those products, enough access to new markets or new clients to sort of sell that product on, and then it begins to get a sense as to the viability and the value that that product has. But that first step is always distribution, which I think is, when you have emerging products like cyber, it's probably one of the most important pieces, that and sort of underlying underwriting principles.
Yes, that's correct.
And do you have a vision for where you think this will take the market in the sort of longer term? Obviously, we're hearing all the time about AI and so on in the press. And what does that look like from a Zywave point of view as we go into almost the second half of the 2020s at this rate?
No, it's fair. It's a fair question. I mean, I'm not going to sit back and with my crystal ball and really predict exactly where that's going to go. I mean, my focus has really been on growing the business, growing the marketplace, growing our customer base here in Europe. But I mean, there's no doubt that there's room for efficiency, with AI, and really how that plays to smarter risk selection, for the underwriters, and really speed and efficiency of quotes. I mean, I imagine, clients are much more demanding, right, today than they ever have been. Just like we are with the flight analogy I mentioned earlier, right? No one's going to sit around and wait, an hour or a day for a price on a flight. Okay, so to be competitive, being part of that marketplace, to almost get immediate gratification and return within seconds or minutes is really what's required going forward. So a step up in technology, including AI, most certainly is in play.
Yeah. And what's the next couple of years look like for you and the Zywave team? You mentioned sort of the growth ambitions that you have. Where do you see the business growing, both across sort of worldwide, sort of your remit on the international piece specifically, or across the U.S.?
Yeah, the acquisitions, I think I may have mentioned earlier, we've made 10 acquisitions in the 3 years that I've been here. Okay, so it's really now about improving on the platform play that we have, okay, and being API-led, digital-first platform that can be used in different instances for the different levels of business that we work with. So I imagine the growth will continue to be around more products for our clients, continuing to help with growth and efficiency. But for me in the European business, it's to continue to grow market share here in London and outside of London.
Yeah.
We have a fairly healthy business outside of London in, I believe, more than 13 countries in Europe, in addition to the UK.
Yeah.
So it's how do we take all the good things that we've done in the US and here in London and continue to expand that globally right now.
Yeah. Nice. And Jon, you mentioned that your experience in the software world goes beyond insurance. You've had to develop and grow teams and sell software, in various places around the world in various industries. How does insurance stack up as an industry? What's it like selling to our world?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So like 3 years in the insurance world, okay, and first off, a lot of similarities in tech. Okay, I mean, selling data, selling connectivity, selling enterprise software. Those principles of how that is conducted to be best in class should remain the same. Okay, but there's no doubt, like, the subtleties are very different. Okay, the acronyms are different. The world is different. And I would say insurance is probably the most relationship-driven vertical industry I've certainly ever worked in. Okay, and I think the best sales folks, the best growth companies, do not rely only on the relationship. Okay, they're still using those best practices of enterprise sales, of being very inquisitive, uncovering information, building value cases, understanding their client and why they would benefit from buying software that you're selling. Incredibly valuable. Okay, as are the relationships in our business. Okay, so it's tying together the two, and it's finding the right people on your team who have those core principles of how to be successful. So if you have that, I mean, there's really no stopping, I think, this industry, because the innovation and the entrepreneurship in the insurance industry is really what drove me to it. I mean, I think there's so much so much room for growth around automation and efficiency, and people who sell software like we do. Okay, it's really just endless. So this is what makes it incredibly interesting for someone with a background like mine.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned sort of the breadth of opportunity in the space, and we won't sort of dive in too much into sort of your M&A future potential M&A strategies, but are there areas of the market that are particularly interesting as you sort of look forward across the breadth of products that you currently have and the industry and the growth potential that it has that are particularly interesting to you or to Zywave more broadly around sectors you might not be touching yet or verticals that you might not be impacting yet? Is there anything else that jumps to mind with that?
Sure. I think we've been quite focused really on data, on connectivity, on distribution and quoting. Like those have been the areas we've continued to focus on and will continue to double down on as we grow. And really, how do we connect that customer base to really leverage all the assets we have and all the clients we have? So no, I really think we'll continue on that same growth path and strategy. I guess with a little flair around which new markets, right, can we grow to, and really that's up to me and the team here in London as to, where can we go next?
Yeah,
Makes sense. And I wanted to ask you just a silly question, really, but we talked about you coming into the insurance industry and discovering all its weird nuances. What's been the most exciting discovery for you about the space? When you found out certain, funny lines of business exist, or ways of doing business that maybe you're like, what, really, they do it like that? What's been maybe some of the most interesting things you found along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just Lloyd's in general. I was totally unaware of how that business worked, even though I worked in EC4 most of my life, not EC3. Okay, like, and you can see the building, you can see and understand the names of the businesses, but I really didn't understand what the bureau and the exchange and how all the syndicates tied together and how they work with the brokers, and the whole value chain was really quite foreign. And I, talking to people about it, who are other city professionals who are not in that space, exactly the same. It's a bit of a little hidden piece in the city if you're not in EC3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This market is, even as you build your familiarity with the industry more broadly, this market in particular is always a bit different, has a bit of a different context to it. Do you sort of look at the client base where you're trying to grow specifically within a London group, or is that the same sort of ambition you have broadly across Europe, or do you think about them as two different, like maybe sub-regions or something that might be a way you attack each of them independently?
Yeah, no, I guess anything that would fit our addressable market, and they're probably the usual suspects of growing Bermuda and growing Zurich, and places where big specialty carriers and reinsurers and hence the brokers exist. And if business is being done there, they certainly can be a customer, and some of them are, right, in those markets today. So we do find, and I'm sure you find the same, like London is quite advanced in some of those areas, and therefore we have more business to do here. Okay, and so it's always easier to do business in your backyard, right, than travel afar to try to grow. So we're going to maximize that first before we fully move to other regions.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think we're getting fairly close to time. I just wanted to get a view from somebody on the front lines, as it were, of getting this industry to use software. How has it changed, even just in your 3 years? We've had, a pandemic and lots of excitement about an insurtech movement and all sorts of things in recent history. How much of sales has been sort of outbound, going and telling people that software exists, you should really get some software, versus maybe now more inbound, we know we want some software, is it yours? Like, how would you characterize that shift, if at all?
Sure. Well, first off, I joined during COVID. Okay?
Yeah.
So it was very I would say very different at that time. There was probably less cold calling. Let's put it that way, right?
Sure.
And trying to talk about new technology and new ways to save or make money. But I would say in the 3 years that I'm here, like people are more open to digital transformation conversations and really transacting business more automated and digital through platforms, through APIs, through integrations, and connecting the different layers of business. And so rarely do we get people who are not interested in having a conversation about how we can do those things. Of course, there's always going to be RFPs out there for existing types of technology, and we're interested in those too, of course. But I think where a lot of the world's like top salespeople get really excited is when you can have conversations about new technology where companies don't necessarily know it exists, but you can explain to them very clearly why it's going to help them grow the business or save money or do something special and different. Okay, and those are the best conversations. And I do think now more than 3 years ago, people are interested in having those conversations. So this is I think this is where we like to focus, more than anywhere else.
Yeah, it's a super exciting time for the industry because I think you're right that decision seems to have been made by every firm now. There's a pursuit of greater efficiency, improved costs, greater growth opportunities, and technology is sort of going to be central to those ambitions. So excellent point to end on. Jon, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a delight.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, everybody.